But we're just so glad to have you all here. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Betty Allen Archer.
Allen.
I would say Betty Archer Allen. Betty has an amazing background, and some of you maybe don't even know that. And this was written in first person, so now I got to kind of transpose this here. But her work experience, she has her doctorate in education with a focus on audiovisual and television teaching and learning. No wonder she is so good at what she does. Her basic degrees are diploma, baccalaureate, and master's in nursing, and a master's in education. She taught nursing both at the Sacred Heart Hospital School of Nursing and Pensacola Junior College. She was the head of the Pensacola Junior College, which is now Pensacola State College, nursing department from 1981 to 1989. She was married to the handsomest man in the world, Farrell J. Allen. They were married 56 and a half years before he passed away on November 26th in 2011. And they brought two children, Robin and Scott, into this world. Her family now consists of Robin Allen, her husband Dan Noel, her two daughters Rachel and Katie Swindle, and his two sons Ray and Vince Noel, all from Champaign, Illinois. Her son Scott and his wife Sherry and their three children Peyton, Grace, and Zach, and their foster daughter Robin, all from Gulf Breeze, Florida. And she's been blessed more in her life than she deserves, which I think she does deserve it. Her experience in writing news includes newsletters with feature articles in St. Francis of Assisi, I guess it is, Episcopal Church newsletter called The Messenger, an editor of the Santa Rosa Women's Club newsletter named the Rose Gazette, and for the last 10 years was probably more, because this was written a couple years ago. Yeah. So probably 12 or 13 years, she's written a column called Talk of the Town for the Gulf Breeze News. She writes that every week, and she is also the editor for the Bayshore Condominiums monthly newsletter.
Except I've given that away now. I like to do that. I like to start something and pass it off because, and I'm always very pleased that to those I pass it to, they do it better than I do.
That's great. And we're going to be announcing that later, but she's going to start doing a newsletter for us, which I am so excited about. So I would like to bring Betty up, and Betty's been working on a new presentation, and I'm going to give you the floor.
Yes, and I'm so sorry we don't have more attending because I really wanted to educate. Hey, can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to talk to you, show you tonight, and of course talk to you about the wait a minute, I gotta get this right. Sorry. I want to get it back to the front. There. The focus is on the organization itself and the things that it has done and how it's changed through the years. And the reason is that I haven't neglected the history of Gulf Breeze. So we'll go back to that at other times. But I think at the end of a new year, of a new era, practically with us, it's time to maybe take advantage of seeing the change. So the purpose of the Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society is first to collect and preserve and display historical artifacts and papers and so forth, so that people will know what they are. And Eric taught me how to do this, so this is probably his thumb here. To conduct historical research and disseminate by publications and display at special exhibitions, which we've done this year a pretty good job of displaying. And then, of course, we would love to create throughout this community and throughout people who have left our area the excitement about what has gone on in Gulf Breeze and how it has developed as a community and as a city. So when and who? It was formed in 1989. It was 28 years later than the actual, the city, Guthries becoming a city. It was started by Joanne James, Betty Ann Johnson, Ruth Ann Weasel, Jean Hunsley, and Betty Price Repko, and then, of course, Dot H. Jordan and Patricia Briscoe. Now, Dot and Patricia are still alive. However, Dot is not taking much, not participating much with us, but she has over the years. It's only been in the last few years that she's given it up. But Patricia is here all the time, and she comes because she really wants to support us, and she also, and she would be here tonight, except that she broke her wrist, and cannot do that. Now, Joanne James was really the person behind it, all of it. She worked here at what was the recreation center at the time. It's hard for me to do this and talk into this. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. And anyway, she would stop everybody along the way and say, how do we do, how do we start a society for keeping the history going in Guthries and telling people that we know it. And she went to other places like Milton, and she did, she would call people and get all the advice that she could. She says there's a whole lot of history here, and all we got to do is find out about it and tell people about it. Betty Ann Copeland Johnson was an avid member at that time, and we owe a lot to her because she put together that scrapbook that we would not know what had gone on in Guthries had we not had that scrapbook. And we're hoping that someday we can get that republished. She was probably the second president of the society. We don't know for sure. And Ruth Van Weasel, she wrote for the Sentinel. She was kind of, I'm kind of a Ruth Van Weasel myself, taking up after her. Anyway, she wrote for the Sentinel over 40 years. And she handled the publicity for this society just like I do for this one now as much as I can. They do pretty good on their own. But she was active in Guthries for 29 years, and everybody really, really loved her. I met a friend of hers recently, as recent as Tuesday night, and they said what a wonderful person she was. And she volunteered, of course, and she worked for the Guthries Library and the West Florida Literary Foundation. And I don't know if you know anything about that. I know that some people in the Santa Rosa Women's Club belong to it. But it's a great organization. And then she served as president of the Temple Belle Sisterhood. She was a really, really super nice person, and everybody liked to see her coming around. Jean Hunsley, we don't know as much about her as we do the others, but she probably served as the first corresponding secretary, and we do know that she and her husband were both very active and in the society. Then Betty Price Repko was the sister of Jane. She was the older sister, but she said Jane bossed her around and told her what to do. And so she said, whatever Jane told me to do, or Joanne, that's what I did. Uh-oh. What do I do now?
Searching for something.
Tell me what happened, Eric.
Yeah, I think that's what it was last time too.
Is that good? No.
Fast forwarded.
I don't think it's anything you can do on your end right now. You're just scrolling through slides.
I can't, it won't, it's not working though. Okay, now.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, this group was a dynamic group. And in fact, Trish reminds me a lot of times that we're seeing the end of that earlier. That we were seeing the end of they had workshops and they had big regional organizations, and they, they were.
Oh, so the wire's not
Can
stretched.
you see from there, Jody?
Mm-hmm.
Could you look at it?
Okay.
You can put it down there.
All right.
That way you can
Yeah, it's up so high, Betty, you won't be blocking it.
Okay, I was afraid I would. Anyway, yes, thank you. She was, anyway, who am I talking about? The place in itself, the organization itself.
The last of the founders.
Dot was very active, and Dot Jordan, she was very active in the society, and she was the one who got the status, the 501 status, and she said she had to apply for it twice. And so am I there? Nope. On January the 10th, they became legitimate. They became, registered and got the certificate, and they got the 503c tax status. I have to see it too, so I know where I'm going. They wanted everybody to know and to recognize what a wonderful piece of property this little piece of property was. And so they wanted them to know that for many years this Santa Rosa Island was just a summer retreat. Many people came here before they had the bridge. They would take boats over here and imagine what it looked like. It was totally overgrown. Cows and hogs and birds and goats and that just roamed this area. There were 4 or 5 springs of fresh water all over in this little area here, and it was just a lovely place to come. And they used to say that remember we had the dog flies, and they said that the dog flies would be so bad they would get on the cows and underneath them, and the cows would go out into the water just to get rid of the dog flies. That was not a nice thing about it. But anyway, sorry guys. To accomplish these things, they did the field trips. I think I've talked to you about this. They also wanted you to know about families here. That's one thing Betty Ann did. The Duncans, who were the first members of the society, they had got the land grant. James Duncan, I think I've told you this tale before. 3 brothers came this way from Kentucky after the Civil War. James and Nelson settled here, and Charles went on to another area, like Fort Walton. But James was the one who got the land grant, and then he granted land to Nelson, and so Nelson was the only one to marry. So all the Duncans come from Nelson. And they also, the Hoffmans, the Martins, the Vincents, the Coes, Vocuses, and so forth. There were a lot of wonderful families. Back when I was writing the Countdown to 50, many families, members, took me on field trips to teach me about the area, and they were really fun field trips. Anyway, then the Guthries cottages came about. And how many of you remember the Guthries cottages? They were here when I moved here. You remember it, don't you, Carolyn?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were really great, weren't they? We used to come. I was a student in high school in Greenville, Alabama, about 125 miles from here. And every year we would come here on a senior trip, or on a junior trip or whatever, and we would stay at those cottages, and then we had, vehicles, so we would go across the bridge to the beach. And that was great. They were built for Jim Abbott and company, and they had a band of men working on it. But there were 35 units in the office fronting the Highway 98 east of the beach road, and they also had a restaurant, grocery store, and a post office, and a Gulf gas company. And
And
You can
that's,
see.
is that all where Office Depot is now? That
Yeah,
area?
it's all that area.
Okay.
And now that was still here when I moved here when I moved from Pensacola, we built here. It was still here in 1974. And I always just loved it back there. And the Spanish moss hung. There was one big house in the middle of it that I never understood, and nobody ever explained it. But anyway, that is who and what brought Mark and Eloise to this area. The company wanted a couple who didn't have children to come and him to help build and them to manage it when it was all done. And they lived in the first house of the unit that was finished. And then then of course they established the first post office, and Mark became the first postmaster. And when he had to write down the city or the area, it wasn't the city then, but the area, he named it Gulf Breeze, Florida. And that's how we became. And now they say that, that we don't have documents showing that, but we do have people that can say that it was true. Anyway, he also established the one on Pensacola Beach to the post office. And then Charles Robbins was the name of the man who first brought mail to this area. And the Bensons, they bought property and they stuck with the post office, and they built the Benson complex. And to this day, I miss that. I don't think that should have been taken down, but they didn't ask my permission. And one of the reasons that we need to get strong in this historical society is that we need to protect places. About 3 years ago, the first Duncan house was taken down. It was 205 years old. Now, people in Pensacola said, there are no houses in Gulf Breeze that are 205 years old. I said, no, there aren't anymore, but there was one, and I put the picture of it on the first, admission notes or whatever we did. But anyway, I grieve for that house because it was here so long. People used it as a community area and a way to get together back in those days, the summer people and so forth.
Where was it located?
Huh?
Where was it located?
It's located, on Peaks Point. That now that it's closed off. And what happened is, and I didn't even know this till afterwards, but what happened is somebody bought the property and they removed the house. Then something happened after they removed the house and they were unable to build. So they took it down for no reason unless they've solved that problem now. Anyway, it makes me sick.
Betty, I was told that Mark and Louise Benson themselves built that complex. They laid the brick.
That, what?
The Benson Complex building, that yellowy.
Oh, yes, they did. I'm not talking about that. Yes, they did, that Benson Complex, they did. And one of the reasons that I hate so much that it's gone is almost everything that was started in this town was started at the Benson Complex. Now, some of it, the pharmacies, they paid rent. In fact, what happened is Bocas he was a young man traveling. He was in the service, in the Air Force, and he was traveling from the Air Force base in
Mary Esther.
Well, beyond that, but it was the Air Force Base there, and he would come through this area, and so he was planning to get, after he got out of service, to get 5 years experience as a pharmacist and then open his own drugstore. So his father said, well, why don't you open a drugstore in Gulf Breeze? Nobody's done that yet, and that's an up-and-coming community and maybe a city one day. So that's what he did, and he went to Mark and he said, I would really like to start a drugstore here, and I would like to have it in your area. He said, well, okay, I will build you an area that you can, where you can have your drugstore, and then you can fill it in to fit your needs. And he did. And so the first drugstore, of course, was born. See? with George Bocas and then later Max. That's an interesting story too. Max lived here and drove into Pensacola to work. George lived in Pensacola and drove into GBAHS to work. So when he built his drugstore, Max would drop by there, and then he began to relieve him so he'd have some time off. Because back in those days, they had, they had to close down if they had, they couldn't leave drugs and so forth open, even though if they were locked up, they still couldn't leave them. So, and have the store open. So anyway, he started relieving him, and then they both went into business together and moved over to Hoffman Center. Then in August the 10th, 1961, the city of GBAHS was incorporated, and the first mayor was what's his name?
C.J. Heinberg.
Heinberg, Dr. Heinberg. I knew him. I don't have a thing here. And the second one was Barbara's father, John Schiff. So they're just Dr. Heinberg, yeah. But how they were elected mayor in those days is they were all ran for councilman, and whoever got the most votes was mayor. And then if they did, if it was just one, they did. Okay, the libraries came soon after, and in the beginning, the first library was one that was set up by the St. Francis of Assisi Church that members, and they had it right out here on Duncan, near the highway, near where the Benson House is, and they manned it for many, many years, and then it went from there. And now, of course, we have the library that. The second one was built in '81, and then we have the regional one now. Ed Lang and Betty Ann Johnson met with Eloise at the time that Ed Lang was president and asked her to leave the society something in the will so that they could carry on their work. And so she did that. And here's the letter confirming that. It says, Dear Eloise, or Dear E. Louise, as I informed you by phone on Wednesday, the Board of GBAHS Historical Society met to discuss your generous offer of your home and 3 adjacent houses, all included in lots 11, 12, 15, 16, and 18 of Duncan subdivision. We understand that you will retain the right to live in your home as long as you want. The board unanimously voted to accept, very gratefully, your generous offer. It's a north view. And Eloise Benson stated in her will, use her home to establish and maintain a public museum known as the Mark X and E. Louise Benson Museum. Now, when this when this property was passed on to the Historical Society, these are the board members. Gordon Sprague, Kathy Keel, David Szymanski, Bob Kelly, Beverly Ishaw, Joan Adams, and Ann Brody. And she died in 2006. They took over in 2007, and they established work groups and completed the cleanup necessary. And they really, I remember them working on this, and talking about what they found, somewhat like we did. They're the ones who put it all in the boxes that you are all now unloading. And anyway, he got insurance coverage for the protection of the property and also for the protection of people there. He said that in February 2007, he paid a real estate tax bill for $3,500 and some bills. A current appraisal was accomplished. The house grounds were cleaned and the fence erected. 2 of the houses were removed. The car was not drivable and was disposed of. I don't think the car was left at the Historical Society, but I guess the church didn't want it. Bob Kelly helped put together an inventory, and the society received pro bono services from several sources. So in 2014, the society was 25 years old. This was 7 years after taking over the Benson property, and nothing had been done except that packing and cleaning and so forth. But in the last few years, there's some board members who have really been, and membership as well, who wanted or began to renew their enthusiasm, shall we say, to establish a museum. And some of it came about, Randall was one of the ones who really wanted the museum, and he was our president at the time, and he invited Cindy Cavalier to come and make a talk to us. Now, Cindy became a member and served on the board, and she came as a speaker and stayed as a member. And she has a good background. She's a lovely person. She had a good background. She served as academic affairs coordinator at UWF. She taught adjunct at Pensacola State College and was a consultant in historical things. And then she presented 2 programs to us that year. And the one that caught all the attention was the Benson House, Another Thought. And she spoke to us on November 11th, 2014, and that hit the fan. That was an exciting time. She said the advantages of having a museum in Guthries are that it will increase the interest in Guthries, period. It'll create a place where old findings and new findings can be kept, and it will also create a place where clubs and organizations can keep their things that could be handed on to generation after generation. Many of them, some of the best scrapbooks I've ever seen is Santa Rosa Women's Club, and that is history written up in a little package. Anyway, she felt that work with schools and colleges in the area would, and this would allow students to show their things as well, and she felt that it would increase revenue to the area if it were active. Anyway, she also talked about how it could be paid for, and she said at some point, of course, she would want to get an Impact 100 grant, and at that time she didn't know anything about Will Do because it didn't exist. But she also talked about Sam's Free Admission Day, Walmart, Home Depot, Archive, what is that? Digitization grants, and I'm not familiar with these. Humanities grants, research and planning for museum grants, I've seen that, and UWF Historic Trust Partnership, and of course that's what Pensacola has done. They basically do not have a historical society anymore in the sense that we do. It is totally run by the trust. Anyway, the advantages of using the Benson House, she said, was that we already own the house and the property, and we had some artifacts there already. The disadvantages is that the house might not be in good shape, but Cavalier visited the house and was optimistic that with some hard work it could be utilized. And she offered another thought about using it as a museum. And she said, when I look at the Benson House, I not only see its current condition, I see what could be accomplished with it. Others say it's hard to get in and out of the area, and most of the members wanted to sell it and find another museum, a place for a museum. They were not enthusiastic about another museum. However, they thought eventually they should have one. Anyway, Cindy's presentation, the night that she came, and it was advertised that she was going to be talking about this room was packed. I mean, people were standing. Almost every official in the city was here. And so she did her great presentation, and I'm telling you, I was ready to start pulling up the rugs. It was just fantastic. But some serving on the board wanted it clearly understood that the board is not in favor of pursuing the Benson property as a museum, and you can't state that any plainer. And that was in the minutes, I did not make that up. They hoped to go in a different direction, and they wanted her known that so much that they hurt her feelings. Anyway, the board of directors meeting in January the 13th, 2015, Gordon Sprague had reported that he had contacted the city, and there was a fire department that was adjacent to the fire, well, it's a building adjacent to the fire department down on Fairpoint. And they said it had more accessibility than the Benson property. It was approximately 1,500 square feet of living area. And parking, handicapped, already had access, and there was no problem with parking. And the only expense that we would have would be the fixing on the inside. And they felt the furniture could be brought from Benson House and set up a display in one of the rooms that would show how people lived in those particular days. And so we made a field trip. The entire board went to see it. It wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't bad. I mean, but it was a lot that would have to be done. And 2 months later, the president at the time announced that the city had rescinded its offer and would not allow us. It was a put-up job. You want to know the truth, they wanted to distract us from this new interest that we had. So basically, what happened after that, they just sort of maintained status quo. They didn't do anything, and many efforts were made to sell the property. Then the cabinet was constructed in here, and you see it there. And the meetings continued on from September through May, and programs were on the third Tuesday of every month. And at one time, because we weren't getting many people in for meetings, they changed it to the library to see if they could generate more interest, but that didn't work either. So then we lay low, didn't do much of anything, but meanwhile we got Barbara Udit on the board, which was a good thing for us. So in February, then there were two hands going up, not just one, and it was great to have a buddy. Peter Calley came to town, and he wanted to develop a center for Guthries for arts here, and he wanted to rent the Benson House. And he had a hard time getting anybody to listen to him. And he thought that he could get a lease and for 2 years, and he would get volunteers in who would fix it up and so forth. And but that he talked to the city. He talked, of course, to us. He talked to the Guthries Arts. He talked to everybody. Yes.
Did Benson have relations with the United Methodist Church or the Catholic Church?
The Methodist Church, they were the primary developers of the Methodist Church, and also the Methodist Church down the highway.
What about Hoffman? Were they related to the Catholic
Hoffman's
Church?
Catholics.
Okay.
The Hoffmans, they gave the money to build the first chapel, because there was no place for people who were staying here in the summer to go for services. So, and then later on, they also gave the land to build St. Anne. And everybody thinks St. Anne is named after a saint. St. Anne is named after his wife.
Whose wife?
Hoffman's wife.
Anyway, another question.
So was she a saint?
Huh?
Was she a saint?
Well, I must have heard so, and I think that's kind of nice.
Another question. Did Benson purchase land from Hoffman?
Purchase what?
Land from Hoffman?
No, and I don't remember who he did, but I can answer that question at another time. But no, he bought it. In fact, I think it's on this thing. I'll show you later, okay?
From Eunice Huey.
Huh?
From Eunice Huey. She was, I think, the sister of Betty Ann Johnson, or Betty
Okay.
Copeland
All
Johnson.
right. But it wasn't from
Thank you,
Hovland.
ma'am.
And Peter was from Gulf Breeze.
Pardon?
Peter Kelly, he was from Gulf Breeze.
Yeah,
I'm not
Peter-
hearing who's talking.
Teresa Markham said Peter Cowley he lived in Gulf Breeze. as a
Yes, he
kid.
was from Gulfbreeze. He came here as a young student. He did not start school here, but he graduated from Gulfbreeze High.
Ma'am, may I say something? I'm a Catholic.
Pardon?
I'm a Catholic,
Uh-huh.
and St. Anne is the mother of Mary.
I know who St. Anne's is. I know who St. Anne is. I also know, though, that the church itself was named for his wife. However, it was I'm sure it was because of
It
St.
might have been a
Anne.
double might have been a double thing.
Pardon?
It might have been a double thing on there.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure, but I read his book, so I know that he did do that. Anyway,
No Catholic.
most people didn't like Peter's proposal, but a few thought it was probably a win-win situation if it could be worked out. Gulf Breeze had three options as to the disposition of the Benson property, according to Gordon Sprague. And he told him February the 14th, 2017, he read the three options to the Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society. And I think that was before you became a member, right? He read it to us. Well, no, it wasn't. It was afterward. Anyway, he said you either start a $2 million fundraising program, and he meant that that's what it would cost to set up a museum, or do nothing for 20 years, at which time all covenants on the deed would be lifted, or petition the court, as the Gulf Breeze Methodist Church did, in order to lift these restrictions. So you can guess which one they were waiting on. So the church, then Gordon asked if anyone had any other options and wanted to propose some. And of course we didn't at that time. However, sometime later, a new group of board members and membership wanted to take the option number 4 and their version of option number 4. They set to work not only to find out what that option number 4 could be, but also what it would take to get there. And looking back to a year in review, I'm just going to turn and read these. The accomplishments that have been made in 1 year. These include acquiring a sound executive board to guide the progress of the Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society. Number 2, bringing new awareness of purpose and goals of the society. 3, collecting with other agencies and collaborating with other agencies in fundraising. Using paper and social media to promote consciousness of the Gulf Breeze community. Giving the community a new look at the progress on Benson House. Volunteer assistance in creating a cognizance in the community surrounding the Benson House and improving the appearance of the neighborhood, and receiving professional help and learning the soundness of the Benson House. Well, let's explore each of these. And am I running out of time?
Yeah, it's like 10 to 7.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're a little over time.
Okay, want to wait and see this another time? Because I go through all of these, or I could go fast.
Well, I guess go fast.
Go fast.
Yeah,
Okay.
go fast.
Basically, read with me. Basically, the offices were filled with people who recognized that selling the Benson House was no longer an option because of the way Eloise had written the will. So every person who had made an offer on the house, it had to be withdrawn because when they read the will, they would not buy it. And it was strictly because of the will. And I talked to some of the potential buyers. Yes.
I came late. Who is Eloise Benson?
Eloise Benson and Mark Benson are the ones who had who settled the area in the modern part of Gulf Breeze.
It's on the video, and you can catch up later.
Yeah.
I think she came in late.
Yeah.
But I'll be glad to let you read my packet here, okay?
Okay.
And you'll learn a lot about it. Okay. The new board of directors decided that they should try to keep faith with the will itself. And at the time now, we know who the board members were, and so forth. And here they are in all their glory. And there are the officers. You see Betty Allen is tagging along to all those other great people. Then bringing new awareness, after the 2017 election, the board of directors held a workshop chaired by Karen Jerkovich and reviewed the goals and so forth. And it set the tone for what we are trying to achieve. Also, Becky sponsored a thank you party and fundraiser on Sunday, June the 4th at the Treehouse Theater, which I missed so badly in Gulf Breeze. And Becky said the membership went from 20 to over 170 in response to saving the Benson House. I can't go into all of that, but that was quite an era there. The celebration included a PowerPoint presentation by me, authors, Dr. Jamin Wells and his students. And that's a relationship that began that day and has existed, and we look forward to working with him many more times. And we had activities for the kids, thanks to Jody and her family. And collaborating with other agencies, we went with West Florida, and a group of students developed a digital history, and it's called Digital History Fall 2017. If you go to that on Google and find the digital history of the Benson House, you can see all the things they did, the little pop-up things. It's fun to watch it. So look at that. It's really very easy. Google it, then you'll find it there. And the fundraising, we've done as much as we could do. Barbara started the banks, the blue ones and the white ones, and they've been successful somewhat. And the society has received a grant from Questers for some of the jobs. Newspaper support, Gulf Breeze News has supported us very well. We've been able to publish almost weekly something about the museum and about the progress on the Benson House. And Pensacola News Journal has given us some coverage, and the In Weekly newspaper, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it has written some things about us. And they all came during that, shall we say, controversy. They all were here at every board meeting. And so the social media played a good part too in providing for us, and we're still using that. Okay. We also, given the community look, we went, had a booth at the Gulf Breeze Chamber Expo for Children, and we partnered with Gulf Breeze Art Festival, and then the 28th Annual Gulf Breeze Community Expo, we participated in that. And when I say we, I don't mean me, I mean the group. And also, we had a lot of volunteers that done everything. And Becky has done more yard work than she probably likes to agree to, but she's also developed a hard-working young man to help her from across the street. So, and they gave us quite a big donation. So we've got that. We've received as much professional help as we can up until this point, and still receiving some. And quite frankly, I don't even know how we've done it so well with our limited funds. And you do know that those two cabinets there, some of you don't, but when we won the new leadership, we wanted to cancel the $7,000 that we had given the city to build cabinets, and they wouldn't let us have the money back. So there they are, $7,000 and how much dollars? I don't know. Anyway, that we have had a lot of help, as you can see. going through. Thanks to Barbara calling these people, and she must have a way with her. Also, a lot of treasures have been found, and we've been really pleased with that. We've got pictures, you know, of even dishes and so forth with the different people finding the treasures. And we need to pursue a museum in Gulf We need more membership, definitive goals, money-making ideas, publicity, and most of all, hard work. Anyway, this is a bibliography, and then this is the changes, and Barbara will, or Becky or somebody.
All right, yeah, if you're gonna leave that up there.
Okay.
great.
Ah,
All right.
sorry, guys.